So hi, welcome to Can't to Can again. With me I have Dr Arne Rubinstein, who specialises in working with young men to integrate them into becoming fully functional adult males. Now, I may not have introduced that quite correctly, but the point is, Arne here is he's had 30,000 young men go through his programs in Australia and around the world, and his work is so important. I really wanted to share that with you because it's a typical kind of Can't to Can story in a way, because he takes young men who might otherwise be falling off the tracks, and through his amazing programs is making all kinds of changes to society for the better. So, Dr Arne Rubinstein, I'd like to introduce you and say what you like about your programs and how you developed it, how you created it, and what you've done. We're on your property, and it's fantastic what you can offer here for the guys. So, how did it start?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Hilton, and lovely to be on the Can't to Can program. And for me, all of this started when I was working as a doctor, and originally I worked in general practice. And what I saw was lots of fantastic young boys and disastrous teenagers.
Right.
In a nutshell.
Okay.
And I had two boys of my own, and I kind of felt like a lot of other parents thinking about, well, what's going to happen to my boys when they become teenagers? Yeah. Am I going to have a great kid who's full of life and inspired and motivated, or am I going to have a disaster? And I started looking into it, and I was also involved in some men's work actually, and started, the first thing we did was we ran a 3-day program for men and boys. There was a lot of fathers and sons, but not all. I think there were 27 boys, dads, other men. We went out into the bush for 3 days, and the men shared stories about their lives. We let the boys ask questions. We did some challenges with the boys, and it was amazing. It wasn't just good, something happened. Something really special happened, and all I could put it down to was boys spending time with men in that sort of environment was incredibly powerful. And I started researching rites of passage.
Now, hang on though, Arne. Look, I mean, boys spend time with men all over the world. What made this different? How is this unique?
Yeah. What was unique was it wasn't just being in the same room.
It wasn't like being in a pub or...
No, but the men were actually honestly sharing about their stories and their lives.
Like their real stories. Real stories.
And the boys were allowed to ask any questions that they wanted.
Yeah.
The programs that we run today are very different. But that first program was a real sort of starting point, and I started looking into rites of passage.
Right.
And what I found was that every Indigenous community all over the world, when their boys reach puberty, they would do some sort of rite of passage. By the way, girls would also have a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Most of my work is with boys, but all of this is equally as important for girls. And so I found that not only did they all create some sort of coming of age rite of passage ceremony, celebration, but the elements were always the same. So the boys would always be taken away for a period of time, and then while they were away, they would hear the stories of the men and their community. They would have to undergo challenges to show that they were a man, and they would also there would be this thing that I call recognition of spirit, or honouring, where in an Indigenous community they believe that every one of our boys is different.
Yeah.
And each of them has their own individual genius, gifts, talents, spirit, and that's actually what they bring to the community. So they saw that it was the role of the elders to name to the boys, to tell them, what do we see in you? Who do we see? And what do we see the gifts that you have?
Like your potential almost. And
correct.
It's like, okay.
And as a doctor, what I was seeing was huge numbers of struggling teenagers who were lost, terribly low self-esteem. Even though some of them were very talented, they didn't recognise their own gifts and talents, and they were really struggling. And the other reason why an Indigenous community would create a rite of passage was to create a shift from what I call boy psychology or boy behaviour to healthy man psychology or healthy man behaviour.
Well, what about all the men that aren't healthy? You know, I mean, there's an assumption there that all functional adults or all adults are somehow functional, but of course we know that's not true.
No, I don't make that assumption at all. In fact, I'd say the majority aren't, but we can't change necessarily the adults, but we can, we can with the boys. In fact, in my work as a doctor, what I found was that a lot of the issues I was dealing with that men had were things that started back when they were teenagers.
Right. Yeah.
And that if we can actually deal with it and start the process when they're teenagers, that makes a huge difference. So what we do is we take away groups of boys with their fathers or a mentor. And on some of our programs, up to half the boys are coming with a man who's not their father, maybe a grandfather, an uncle, a family friend. And everyone has to leave behind their watches and their mobile phones and any electronics, any reading material, any work stuff. We go out in the bush.
Yeah.
And that already is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And then each day we sit in circles and the men share stories and they talk about when they were the age the boys are, what their lives were like, and what their relationships were like with their fathers. Which is already incredibly powerful for a lot of the men and for the boys to hear. And the boys just sit there and they listen, they're fascinated. And the men talk about, their successes and their failures. We talk about loss, grief. We talk about relationships and sex. I mean, I see today boys are learning about, sex through porn. Which is a massive problem. And they need
movies, don't you
all
find
movies.
The kind of stereotypes of how I think I'm supposed to be.
And so when they actually get to have, hear these discussions, and when we talk about, things in a healthy, respectful way, including, for example, having a discussion on what's the difference between having sex and making love, and then hearing from the men. And that's just one of the topics, but it's very powerful for the boys, very powerful. And they want to know what it's like to be a man. They don't want to be told how to live their lives or what they're supposed to do. But they do want to hear stories, and then they make up their own decisions. So we do the stories, and we have we create some challenges for the boys, and we also get the boys and the men thinking about their vision for the future. How do we want to be in 5-10 years time? If we're going to be the best men that we can possibly be, what's that going to look like? And what behaviours do we need to let go of? What are the things that we do that are no longer appropriate? And then finally there's this acknowledging of each of the boys where each one of them individually sits or stands in front of the whole group, and then their father or the man who brought them on the program comes and stands in front of them and tells them what they love about them. And what they're proud of.
I can imagine how
and another man will also tell the boy what he admires and respects about him. And the boys, they're really being seen for who they are. And it changes their lives.
Anything in closing, is there anything else you'd like to say that, I don't know, to parents or to somebody, maybe they know a young guy who's a bit lost, starting to act out, starting to get into a bit of trouble? What do we do?
Look, I mean, there's a couple of things. The first is that the whole aim of this program is it's to be preventative. Like, I want to get every kid. I don't want to wait for all the kids who are getting in trouble. We want the great kids, the ones who are doing really well and who are going to be the leaders in the future.
Sure.
And do it with them. So I want to do it with all kids. But there are a few things that, in my experience, all kids relate to. And one of them is, if they are acting out or not, but to find a moment to tell them something that you really appreciate, admire, respect or love about them. Just whatever that is. That's one thing. And to just spend time with them. Find things that you enjoy doing together and spend some time with them.
And how, if I'm a parent, if I'm quite used to the criticism model, what do I do as a parent to kind of change my behaviour to encourage that?
Well, one of the things I talk to about parents is that we need to when they do muck up, which they will at some stage. Everyone, we all did. They all will, I promise you. But is to separate the person from the behaviour. So it's like, Johnny, I really love you, but taking the car and crashing it into the river was not okay.
Right.
You know, we actually need to talk about this.
Yeah.
We need to work out what we're going to do, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
you know, if we shame our children, we actually push them away.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to know. So if we do shame them and push them away, next time something goes wrong, they won't feel safe to come to us.
Right.
And I want my children to know
Yeah.
that when they're really in trouble, they can come to me.
Yeah.
So it's a really big thing, and I've spoken to many men who'll talk about a time when they were shamed, either by their parents or something at school or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a wound.
Yeah. Of course it is. Of course it is.
You know, and I guess my final thing to say is, you know, I really want this work to become normal. And even if you're not going on a camp, at that time when your boys are changing, to be spending time with them, to be sharing your stories, to be honouring them for who they are, and to really have them know that, you know, you want to support them to have the best life that they can have.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic, Arne. Now, I know also, this has just come to me, I know we're trying to close here, but you did mention about women, and I know that you've talked a little bit about women going through something similar. And
Well, you know, historically a woman would go through a rite of passage as well. I mean, you know, a girl changing into a woman, that's a massive thing. And we want them supported also. We want them to hear stories from older women. We want them to be supported. You know, we do run mother-daughter programs here. You know, I have a dream that one day there'll be a mountain here, there'll be a father-son or a man-boy program here, and a mother-daughter, girl-woman program here.
Yeah.
And halfway through, at some point, the boys and girls will actually come and sit together.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine, you know, a group of boys and girls have been out in the bush a couple of days, been thinking about life, and they get to sit together and, you know, talk about what sort of relationships they want to have when they're adults.
Yeah.
What sort of partners they want to have.
Yeah.
Now imagine doing that work at 13, 14.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting until 35, 45, whatever. After a marriage breakdown or, you know, there's all sorts of scenarios.
That's right.
But, you know, there's lots of opportunities and potential for what we're doing with this work.
Mate, I'm inspired by your work, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I want to shake your hand on camera, mate,
Pleasure.
because it's terrific.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to sharing this. So,
Great.
thanks very much for your time.